Today was a long day. It is the early evening now. Beautiful weather here, beautiful evening, around 83 degrees, I think, right now. But it was a long day because it was a follow-up appointment in Seattle at the Alzheimer's Geriatric Wellness Clinic for my mother. I have taken her there, I don't know, 5 or 6 times over the last few years, and that's where she'd already been diagnosed, but that's where we had some further testing done, a brain MRI and things like that. I've done several videos about this, mainly because I want to talk to people about it, but I also want support. I think it's good if we could all talk about this together and support each other, because this is really, really tough. When you have a parent or a loved one who has a type of memory disorder or dementia, Parkinson's dementia, Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, it's really a long and difficult journey as a caregiver. If you're your parent's caregiver, that's a whole nother layer of stuff. But today I went with some very specific questions because my mom is desperately needing to move. She doesn't think so because she has no self-awareness, and but she has 3 times total now that we know of gotten lost in front of her apartment area and had to be escorted and helped back to her apartment. Didn't know which apartment number she was at, and she's also having more delusions and hallucinations, mainly the delusions, and they're very scary. Of course they're scary, and she's aware of her delusions. When she's in it, she's not, but when it stops, then she says, why did I do that? Why did I think that? Why did I feel like my mother just died in my apartment? That's been a long-standing, revisited delusion that continues to come to her. All right, so I want to share with you some of the things I asked, and maybe this will help you. This is, again, not medical advice, and this is what our doctor, there were 2 of them, we saw 2 physicians today. One's a fellow, one's an Alzheimer's geriatrician who does a lot of research. She is the best person for my mom. Prior to that, we used to see a geriatric psychiatrist. So my mom has seen a good set of people who have guided us the best that we can given these circumstances. Now, every Alzheimer's patient is different. Each personality is different. My mother's personality at this time in her life is agitated, depressed, crying a lot, resistant to everything, absolutely everything. It isn't about, well, she just wants to hang on to some dignity or some choices in her life. It isn't that. We're way past that. She doesn't have enough executive functioning ability or decision-making ability to know, if I do this, then I will feel that, or if A happens, then B happens. So it's kind of hard to explain, but once your loved one gets to that point where they have none of that left, you know what I mean. And so, okay, let me share some things with you. And if this helps, wonderful. We're in the middle of transitioning from where she lives independently to an adult family home. We've looked at many of them, and I've also looked at the next step up, which is a dementia locked facility, and it was such a piece of shit hellhole. I wouldn't even put an animal there for boarding for 1 day or 1 hour. Not all of them are like that. This was appalling, and I won't put her in a place like that. And I encourage all of you who are going through this to keep on looking. Look at different places. When your loved one is on Medicaid, though, it makes it slim pickings out there on who will accept Medicaid. Now, this is different than people who will accept private pay. If you have a family member that's going into a facility that looks like a 5-star hotel, Ritz-Carlton, that's where they get to go. That's because they are private pay. They get the air conditioning. But the place that I looked at, just on the building next door, they are Medicaid. They don't even get air conditioning. That's a whole nother story. Back to some things that I learned that I want to share with you, and keep in mind this is not medical advice, and this is just what the doctor talked about for my mother. Nutrition. I'm just going to go through the questions that I told her before I leave today. I've got to have a game plan for this transition, this move, and I also have just got to get some answers, because My mom is so severe, I would like to know, and she started so many years with this, I'd like to know about the genetic testing, ApoE. I'll put it up here, the exact name, and I think it's the protein that they're looking for on this lab blood test for family members. And she said she just got done with her particular research on that she's publishing. And she said, you can do it if you want. It's about $250. If it says that you have this protein, that doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's. If it says that you don't have the protein, that doesn't mean you're not going to get Alzheimer's. So it's not conclusive. There are other tests too. It's not conclusive. Okay, moving on. Get the blood test if you want. It's not really going to tell you anything. Oh, and we're not going to give any different advice. Is there any one thing that I could be doing now? Anything? Are there any supplements, vitamins, particular diet? I know I shouldn't smoke and I should exercise. I mean, that's a given, and those are both covered. What else is there that will either make Alzheimer's not happen or delay it, and I have a healthier version of Alzheimer's, less severe? And she said there is no such thing. No matter what, we're going to tell everybody the same thing. Please don't smoke, don't drink alcohol in excess, and exercise, stay socially active, and eat a nutritious, balanced diet. And she, just like my cardiologist, always talk about the Mediterranean diet. How about if those medications, like, I'll put them up, for dementia, Aricept, donepezil, etc. How about if those got started years before, like now at my age, before my mother was diagnosed, or if it's a strong family history, or, if somebody's been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, how much is that going to help? I've already talked about this in other videos. How do you even measure it? How do you measure when you're taking it what it really is delaying once you measure a year or two later? You know what I'm saying? So she said what we help is with disease symptom management, but not disease elimination. So your mom could now go on Aricept because it might help with her hallucinations and delusions. Or she might go on memantine. Anyway, if she went on that particular one, we've already tried that recently again, but she said that sometimes helps with the feelings of anguish and the crying and the anxiety. But we're not getting rid of or eliminating or delaying or slowing it down. We're just managing the symptoms with these medications, and that's all they are meant to do. I find that sometimes misinformation is out there about everything, and definitely about Alzheimer's. You're going to see, if you want a cure for Alzheimer's, go over to this person's page where he'll tell you all about diet, and or go over to this person's page where they're going to tell you about certain supplements. Or if you just would start these medications right away at the beginning, at the onset of memory issues, it will postpone it for so many years that you might not even experience Alzheimer's. None of that is true. I asked her, how do I make the transition from where she lives now completely independently to this adult family home? That is fantastic. I really am looking forward to this for her. And I also understand there are people out there listening that are probably wanting to come after me, like, how could you do that to your mother? Well, can she live in the house with me? No, she can't even barely walk. She needs a walker. She needs assistance to help her walk, plus a cane. She can't go up and down any steps. She has to have a wheelchair for bigger outings. She had a wheelchair the whole day today. So living in a home that has stairs and no bedrooms in the main floor, that's not really conducive. Our house is pretty small. Then I have a sister who has a lot of animals, and she would have to probably crate her animals, or she'd have to change her entire life with her animals that she does the foster program for, because you really shouldn't have somebody who's 88 and difficult to Do you hear that? Those are the coyotes across the street from me. I hear a pack of coyotes. Okay, I'm back. The coyotes are literally right there across the street. Okay, so anyway, What else? Where was I? If family members take in somebody who has a disability, who has an illness, who has a moderate to severe Alzheimer's and difficulty walking and ambulating. So you're going to be the caregiver. Now, are you willing to give up your job and your hobbies and your life? And it's a daily responsibility. You can have some caregivers come in. More than likely, you're not going to have somebody that's there 24 hours a day to help you, but you will have to give up your job because that person is your job. You know, unless your loved one is not that, I don't want to say the word sick. Let's see. If your loved one has maybe mild cognitive impairment or just has had major surgery, needs a place to go for healing, and that sort of a thing. That's what I'm talking about. Not somebody who's going to get out your door and perhaps walk off and be harmed or is actively hallucinating and having delusions, or somebody who, like my mother, might ask the same question every approximate 2 minutes for an hour or another hour or another hour. And there's another question I wanted to share with you that I asked the doctor. How do I stop this ruminating? Because it's not really fair to her. It is hard on other people too, because you have to answer the same question every 2 minutes, approximately every 2 minutes and 6 seconds. And you're going to do that, 20, 30, 40, 50 times. You're going to answer that exact same question. How do we stop that cycle? And there was absolutely no answer to that. There's no answer. I said, what about the fact that when she's living at home alone and I see her through the camera and it's midnight, 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. and she's still on the same loop, the same ruminating loop of staring at her calendar and looking over at the clock and the date, back over to the calendar and over to the clock and the date. And that will go on all night. How do we help her to break that cycle? Yeah, these things are tough. And back to what I always ask you guys, do you have a loved one who's doing these things? What worked? What worked? We can't medicate them to the nth degree. We can give them things to help with the delusions and the hallucinations and help calm them when they are in such a state of anguish. But there are many, many other symptoms that we cannot help, that we cannot fix or resolve or even lessen to help them along the way. Trying to think if I covered everything that I would be delighted to share with you and hope that it might help somebody else out there. Covered nutrition. My mom has lost 6 more pounds. People with dementia, with Alzheimer's, and many other illnesses or anything, can really affect the appetite. This disease process does affect the appetite, even if you have somebody over there cooking for that person, handing them food. That doesn't mean they're going to eat it. So I discussed nutrition with her. There was nothing other than try to have a healthy Mediterranean diet. I've already shared with you there's nothing to do about the ruminating circles that go on for hours. You can try your best to redirect and just hope that redirecting works, at least for a little while until the next thing comes up. There's no easy way to transition somebody, or somebody like my mother who has zero idea what's wrong with her and thinks we're all the problem. Why would you want me to move? Why would my manager of my building talk to me about moving for safety? There's nothing wrong with my safety. You're crazy. You just want me to die. How do you feel about doing this to me? Why are you doing this to me, Lisa? That's what she's feeling. She's feeling incredibly attacked. And she says, things like today, now I know why my family doesn't want me. And she's crying saying that. Wow. I don't know, guys. I just don't know. Been doing this a long time and I still have no answers. If you got any, please help me out. Setting the date and the time and having family around and then transitioning from her place, just time to go over to the other place. We're going to expect it's going to be very, very difficult. Transition is difficult for everybody. But the day is approaching and I'm trying to get as ready as possible. I asked, will this continue to get worse? I did bring up the fact that I was a bit disappointed that nobody in the past visits talked to me about how these hallucinations and delusions are going to come in full force like this. I honestly had no idea, I guess. If anybody's looking for a job, I would suggest going to medical school and being an Alzheimer's researcher or elder care geriatrician, something like that, because they are desperately needed. They are stretched thin, and this doctor does her very best, but she can't cover everything, and we just have to keep going back up for another visit and another visit. All right, I've probably talked too much already. I hope that you're all doing well. I'll see you at the next video. My videos are about medical topics mostly and some fun blogs. I'm going to show you some pictures as I go through some of this topic with you. Just see what our day looked like. My son, thankfully, this was his day off from work, and he spent the day helping us out. My mom is a two-person job, just like she's a two-person ADL, Activities of Daily Living. She requires a couple people. And I appreciate him very much. My mom loves him so much. She loves both her grandsons more than life itself. And I was just grateful that he could be with us. So you'll see some pictures of him in here as well. My husband is supportive, but he works with FEMA, not for FEMA, but with them. And he is busy. There's a lot going on right now in Texas and in the United States, and he can't always help with his mother-in-law. So I'm kind of on this journey without a whole lot of help, and I appreciate you all listening. Okay, back to what I was saying. If you like videos about medical topics and some fun vlogs, and if you like videos about myths and facts about medicine and medical errors and things that we can learn from, please consider subscribing and definitely give it a thumbs up, because otherwise it doesn't do anything, and my video sits in the basement in the dark, and then YouTube doesn't push it out to anybody. It doesn't benefit those that maybe could, definitely learn some things or give support, or I could give support back for those experiencing the same things. Okay, have a good evening. Thank you for watching.